Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What's Up, Grimes. We are here today with Heather Hoff. She is a reactor operator and procedure writer at Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant in California, a mother, and a co founder of Mothers for Nuclear, a grassroots organization with a simple mission to begin a dialogue with people who want to protect nature for future generations. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, I'm excited to have this dialogue with you guys.
So excited. Would you start with telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in rural Arizona without many resources, with a wood burning stove for heat and no air conditioning, if you can imagine that in Arizona in the summer. It was pretty awful.
Oh
And a
boy.
composting toilet, composting everything else, saving, reusing, trying to be efficient, living off the land essentially. And picking up trash and recycling, caring about all those things, and thought that's how I was going to save the planet. And over the years, tried to convince a lot of other people to be like me, use less, pick up trash, care about the planet, and got really frustrated over time that people didn't seem to want to do that. They didn't want to use less energy. And kind of roundabout ended up in a career at Diablo Canyon. I was pretty nervous about it when I first started there. It's the last remaining nuclear plant in California. And I went to Cal Poly, our local university here. And after I graduated, I couldn't find a job in engineering. And after, a couple years of working random jobs, making cow thermometers and working in a winery and working in a clothing store, which was actually really fun, but I made very little money. And eventually I was like, I need a real job. I'm going to try Diablo Canyon, even though I'm really scared. And I went in there with a lot of questions and asked questions for about 6 years before I was like, oh my gosh, nuclear is amazing. And it's kind of the answer to all those things that I used to care about: land conservation and energy availability and protecting the planet, like giving people energy with the least impact on our planet. Oh my gosh, nuclear is amazing. And so I completely changed my mind, but it took a really long time. And even after that, I had several cycles, of getting kind of re-scared about nuclear when the Fukushima events happened. You guys have probably heard about that. Super scary. I was in the control room at Diablo Canyon when that was going on, and there was so much media talking about it. And I almost, wanted to quit my job because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't work for an industry that can do this. But then, when I learned more about what was really going on and the actual impacts, I kind of changed my mind again and realized that it's our fear of nuclear that caused us to overreact and evacuate people, which is actually the only part of the event that really hurt people. And so over the years, had a lot of cycles about nuclear, and now kind of came out of that with the feeling that we have to do more nuclear. We have to protect our existing nuclear if we want to address climate change, reduce emissions, and give more energy to people to live high quality lives. So
That's amazing.
yeah, Diablo Canyon, we were going to shut down the plant a little bit earlier than expected. And I didn't really understand why. And when I learned that it was mostly political reasons for that, I decided to start Mothers for Nuclear with my friend Kristen to try and communicate about nuclear differently, because it is kind of a scary thing, when you...
Heather, I have a question for you. We want to hear about Diablo Canyon. We want to hear about how you met your co-owner as well. But can you tell us a little bit about nuclear energy? What is it specifically that does all these good things? Because MK and I, when we sat down to record this, we were talking to one another. I think I thought I knew what nuclear was, but to me, the image is like 1950s and like it's very damaging and a scary thing. And then to hear somebody spin it in such a positive light, can you tell us more about that?
It's funny, and it's such a hard thing to try and talk about because it is kind of scary. And our control room at Diablo Canyon does kind of look like the 50s, like there's all these analog gauges and all these monitors and flashing lights and all this kind of old looking technology. But really, fission is our newest way kind of generating electricity. We started way back when people were first trying to develop energy systems with wind power, like turbines on windmills to, help pump water out of the ground. And people used, wood and burning dung and doing inside cooking for heat. And, eventually we discovered fossil fuels and, kind of transitioned from coal to natural gas and started developing solar power. But nuclear is kind of like this newer technology that it started developing in the I guess the 40s and 50s, but eventually became what is now our largest and most powerful source of clean energy. So it's pretty exciting because nuclear is different than fossil fuels. We don't actually burn anything, so there's no emissions. And it's kind of like a fancy way of boiling water. It's similar to fossil fuel plants in that way. Like in fossil fuel plants, you burn coal or natural gas to create heat and make steam and drive a turbine. But in nuclear fission, we use uranium, which is a really large kind of unstable atom, and we can create an environment where that atom splits apart and gives off a whole huge quantity of clean energy. So that energy we can harness as heat to also make steam and drive turbines and make clean electricity. So it's pretty cool.
I mean, it's fantastic because I didn't know about any of this, which I feel almost ashamed to say because I like to think that I'm on top of our latest advancements. I didn't even know about Diablo Canyon, which is what I'm planning to ask you about next, until Grimes tweeted about it. And I was like, that's interesting. And I started looking into it. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes on at Diablo Canyon and what your job looks like there as well?
Yeah, of course. I started as a plant operator where I was in charge of kind of monitoring and watching our plant systems. I would have daily rounds where I would go to different areas of the plant and check on equipment, make sure everything was functioning properly, take readings, trend parameters, and just basically run the plant and make sure everything was happening smoothly. And I did that for a couple years, and then I went back to more training to get my license to operate the reactor. And that's a process that's regulated by our government, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So there's a very kind of detailed process. This is actually my NRC license right up here that I earned after about 2 years of training in the classroom and on the simulator, doing all these exercises and practices to be ready for anything that could potentially happen at the plant and also learn how to operate it normally. So we lots and lots of practice and training. And then I was in the control room at Diablo Canyon running the plant and making 10% of California's electricity, which is something that was pretty amazing to me when I realized how much power we generate on such a tiny little piece of land. There's another picture of Diablo Canyon right here there's actually a whale jumping in front of it, which is totally amazing. And you wouldn't think, you mentioned that like kind of scary image that you have when you think of nuclear. You don't really think of like whales and wildlife and birds of prey and like coyotes, on the land surrounding the plant. And it's really just a haven for nature. And when I realized how much power we make and how little impact it has on the planet and the nature around us, that really just made me even more of a supporter.
That's amazing. So back to your upbringing, I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how your father influenced your passion for the environment.
Yeah, he was a big skeptic and also cared a lot about population, kind of thought that humans were the downfall of the planet. I don't know if you guys have heard of the book called The Population Bomb, but it's basically about, how we're going to overpopulate the planet. We're going to get beyond capacity to support the people that we have. And my dad talked about that all the time and definitely influenced me, about not having more than 2 kids, one to replace your mom and one to replace your dad. Like, that's it. And we need to stabilize somehow. There was a lot of, fear around our planet can't support us if we keep up our current habits. And that's been one of the biggest shifts for me, is that I think our population is going to keep growing for a while, and the best way to stabilize is to develop countries and industrialize them and help them have access to energy, and that's how we stabilize birth rates. And as a part of that, the best way to give all of these people, including, developed and non-developed countries, a good quality of life is to give them reliable, plentiful, and affordable clean energy. And one of the best ways to do that is with nuclear. It's uranium that we were talking about earlier that, does the fission process. Uranium is a really dense source of energy, which is one of the things that makes it great. And there's some great little stickers about that. I love U-235. That's the element.
So cute.
Yeah, and we have lots of other great stickers, our Mothers for Nuclear logo. And one of my favorites that, kind of talks about fission is split. We talked about the atom splitting. Split, don't emit. So we're going to split atoms, not burn stuff that creates emissions. And so my dad, he kind of put some fear in me about being hopeful for the future, but I was able to reclaim that a little bit by learning more about nuclear. And it honestly gives me hope for our future as humans on this planet. And I was able to share a little of that hope with him as he was getting dementia near the end of his life. He had an unusual form of dementia called frontotemporal dementia, FTD. And at the end, he was always kind of an engineer and a mad scientist, and he would ask me lots of questions about the plant. And at one point I had told him about our main generator system, which is there's all these electrical, converting AC to DC current, and it happens in this process along the shaft of this turbine that's spinning at 1800 RPM. It's an engineering marvel. It's really exciting. And even though my dad was kind of skeptical about nuclear at the beginning, near the end, he just kind of would ask me to tell him the same story over and over again. Can you tell me about how your main generator works again? And it was the sweetest thing. So.
It really sounds like he was so proud of you for what you ended up doing. And it's so good to hear you talk about the hope for population, because I remember when I was going through my bachelor's degree, the science classes I was taking, environmental science classes, had the same outlook as your father. It was we need to stop because the population's overwhelmed, Earth can't hold more kids. And then you have the Elon Musk plan where it's have as many kids as possible because we're going to go to Mars, so who really cares?
Yes.
Just feels like a lot of hope. And that brings me to Mothers for Nuclear. Why Mothers specifically? Because the way I found out about you, and I actually heard about you prior to Grimes tweeting about you because of ads I had seen. I was like, that's so interesting. So can you tell us about the mother component?
Yeah, well, partly, when my friend Kristen Zaitz, she's the co-founder of Mothers for Nuclear, we both work at Diablo Canyon. And as I mentioned, we had heard that the plant was maybe going to shut down early. And we both decided, we have to do something about this. And what are we going to do? And we started thinking about the reasons behind why the plant was shutting down when it was such a great plant and such a great source of energy for California. And we just realized not only how much misinformation is out there about nuclear, but how our industry hasn't done a good job about providing communicators, messengers that deliver a message that people can trust. Utilities are kind of scary and kind of you have a corporate guy, blah, blah, blah. And you're I don't believe that. And as mothers, we have an automatic, I think, trustworthiness in terms of caring for the future, wanting the best for our children. And Krista and I both realized that we were also different than a lot of people that we worked with. There's not a whole lot of females in our industry and not a whole lot of mothers. It's kind of a challenging, taxing job at some points, especially, when I was on shift as an operator. That's something that not a lot of females do. And I was actually the first woman to ever go through a pregnancy as an operator at Diablo Canyon. So yeah, lots of blazing trails there. And we just decided that we had a special message to share and a special perspective, and that, as Mothers for Nuclear, that would also generate some attention, because people hear that and they're like, you're for nuclear? Wait, say it again. You're for nuclear? And it's just like, it's a little surprising. So it catches people off guard and makes them pay attention a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Back to your job, what does a day-to-day look like for you?
Well, right now, I'm not an operator anymore, so I'm not in the plant or in the control room. I write procedures for operators, and it's really the best of both worlds for me, because I don't have to work shift work anymore. I do miss operating the plant and, being in there like with all the big equipment and stuff, which is really cool and technical. But yeah, so I have a desk job in the administration building, and I work 410s, and I write all of our abnormal and emergency procedures. So that means, anything that happens, everything we do at the plant, operators follow written guidance that tells them how to operate the equipment, when to start certain pumps, when to like do this and do that. And it's all very controlled and pre-planned. And our guidance that I'm in charge of, our off-normal guidance, is special because, one, we don't hardly ever use it, because normally the plant just runs, it's like, we call it hot, straight, and normal. It's just like, it's making power 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it just kind of cranks it out full power all the time. And that's great. But we also plan for all kinds of potential, future events that anything could happen at any time. So we have procedures, what if this fails? What if that fails? And I get to, help make sure all that guidance is up to date and clear, and the operators can follow it. We practice it on the simulator, so I still get to go down onto the simulator and practice, which is one of my favorite parts of my previous job. When I was actually an operator, we spend about 20% of our time in training to make sure that we're still proficient with, I mentioned, all those controls in the control room, all the lights, all the indications. We need to be able to glance around and see, that light's on, what does that mean? Like, what do we do next? And there's a lot to keep up on. So there's a lot of training, and I'm excited to still have, my piece in that.
So on the simulator, is it like everything goes wrong at once? Like, what does that look like? That's fascinating.
Sometimes. Usually it's a specially designed scenario, that takes operators in training through, a certain procedural flow path. Like, this fails and we practice this procedure, and then maybe another failure comes in, and it forces us to, like, reconsider our priorities, which one's more important and who's going to deal with what. How do we use the teamwork in our crew to deal with, all of the most important issues? And it's really a huge, like, computer game and puzzle that requires skills that I never thought I would have or need. And it's really quite fun. And it really works, speaking from experience, being an operator in the control room. When we had a failure this one time, it was like a simulator scenario. Like, all these lights start flashing, like The Simpsons. And Homer Simpson, and it's just like, meh, meh, like everywhere. And I just stop and I'm like, what is going on? Like, that's a lot of stuff. I haven't really seen this before in my training. Take a minute and assess. And then I'm like, okay, my training kicks in, and I'm just like, okay, this is happening. Check this, look here. Okay, this failed, this is happening. And like, here's the action that I take. And it just like, it kicked in and it worked, even though it wasn't a particular failure that we had practiced. It was just kind of an ingrained process. And it's really interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, it sounds like all that training paying off. And I want to ask a little bit more about Diablo Canyon and your activism with that. You had mentioned that there's some stuff going on that's very political. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, well, just real quick before that too, I feel like I just dove into like all this technical stuff. And part of what we do at Mothers for Nuclear is we're trying to communicate differently about nuclear energy in a way that's maybe less scary. And so we say that we like to talk about emotions and feelings first, and then also be able to back it up with experience and facts and data. So a lot of what you just heard was like the experience and facts and data, not necessarily going to make you feel better about nuclear, because all those alarms going off, it sounds kind of scary. But yeah, so what's happening politically with Diablo Canyon is in about 2016, there was a proposal announced to not relicense the plant in exchange for some state regulations that were happening where our state lands commission has a permitting process, and I don't know how technical or how detailed to go. Like there were some delays in our plant construction, and these permits didn't get shifted to match the 40-year cycle of the plant, so they were going to expire early by accident. They just it was a kind of administrative thing. And Gavin Newsom, our governor, kind of decided to use this as leverage to try and get PG&E to shut down the plant early. And so this deal was made with a bunch of environmental groups and even some of our unions. I think they kind of felt like they saw the writing on the wall, and they wanted to help their members in the best possible way. So they kind of got on board with the company and the environmental groups, and everyone's like, yeah, we're going to shut down Diablo Canyon, and here's our plan for how we're going to replace the energy with other clean energy, and so it's going to be great. And so they put this plan out, and I work for the utility, and I cannot speak for them. I do all my advocacy separately on my own time, and I'm allowed to express my own opinions, but I've been working against them for the last 6 years. They want to shut down the plant, and I'm like, no, that's the wrong thing. So it's been kind of a fine line between my employment and what I care about and what I think is right. And so I guess generally the first few years, our company was headed down this path of, yes, we're going to decommission the plant starting in 2025. And we were full bore preparing for the decommissioning process, and no talk and no hope of continued operation past 2025. But just recently, it's become, I think, more clear that California doesn't have enough electricity at all. We're facing blackouts, and it's climate change. We're in a drought, so we have less hydropower, and there have been fires, so smoke blocks solar, and there's just all these different impacts to other energy systems that maybe they weren't prepared for or thinking about when they made this initial agreement to shut down the plant. And so we know we don't have enough electricity, and we're not even talking about clean electricity. California is still 50% natural gas for our electricity, and we also import 30% of our electricity, so those are huge amounts that aren't necessarily clean energy. And California wants to be a climate leader, and we also want to keep the lights on. So I think, kind of like a last minute knee-jerk reaction, the same governor, Gavin Newsom, is like, oh, we need to keep running Diablo. So there's been a really big shift lately, and we're kind of trying to make this big pivot as a company to keep running the plant longer. And I think he owes us all a huge apology because he started this mess in the first place.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on.
So speaking of the situation with Diablo Canyon, I found out about you through Isabel, I may be butchering her last name, Bomeek of Isodope.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get connected with how did you guys get connected with her?
Yeah, so the pro-nuclear community is rather small still. We kind of all know each other, and as soon as someone new gets interested in nuclear, they can kind of, do internet searches on nuclear and find Mothers for Nuclear and find Stand Up for Nuclear and Generation Atomic and Environmental Progress and all these other groups that have supported nuclear. And so Izzy did that. She found us on social media and reached out to us, and talked about how she had learned more about nuclear energy through a NASA scientist, Carolyn Porco, who was in charge of a lot of the imaging for the Cassini program. And I guess Carolyn had tweeted about some advanced reactors, and Izzy saw that and got all excited and started doing her research, and then realized advanced nuclear, that's really cool, but existing nuclear is also really cool and really great, and we need to protect it. And so she felt a kind of, I don't know if she would describe it as sudden, but she came onto our scene suddenly and was like, "Raw, I'm gonna save Diablo." And we were like, yeah, so great. And Yeah, so I mentioned like our pro-nuclear community, we're pretty small still, but we definitely believe in having all the voices and all the different angles. Like she comes and she reaches young people and like cool people, and which I expect like lots of your followers on this podcast are like that group. And it's great, moms, maybe we don't reach the young cool people quite as much. we reach other moms and women. Generation Atomic reaches out a lot to students and residents in areas where nuclear plants are built, and like mobilizes them to take action to support nuclear. And so like there's all these different groups now that have different voices and care about slightly different things and reach different people, and we're kind of all working together to mobilize whoever we can reach to help build this movement and make it more like, the environmental movement. It's huge, and there's so many people that care about clean energy and renewables. We need the same thing for nuclear. Nuclear needs more advocates. There's so many people that support renewables, but not so many that support nuclear. So we're working on building that up.
Yeah, and you just touched on this. I know that you guys work with, what I read, 3 partner organizations, World Nuclear Energy Day, which is apparently today.
Today, yes.
Oh, happy World Energy Day.
Yes.
And then Students for Nuclear Energy and Generation Atomic. For World Nuclear Energy Day, how did you spend today?
We had a celebration at lunchtime where we invited a whole bunch of other advocates from all these other groups to come and share what they're excited about, because World Nuclear Energy Day has been happening for a few years now. It always happens on December 2nd of every year. And that date is to commemorate the first chain reaction at the Chicago pile, which is when we made the first, nuclear fission chain reaction. And so it's a super exciting day for nuclear, and Jim Scherer decided to create, World Nuclear Energy Day to help celebrate that and to help spread awareness of nuclear energy. And he has a theme every year. The theme for this year is a chain reaction. And I just love the theme because there's been so much great happening for nuclear lately that I feel like it truly has been a chain reaction of people supporting nuclear. Like I mentioned all these different groups, Generation Atomic, Stand Up for Nuclear, Izzy's group, she started called Save Clean Energy. And all of us were just like bouncing, off each other and creating a chain reaction of support for nuclear. And it's really exciting. So we had a lunchtime meeting to celebrate and get together and share success stories and share our excitement and what we're looking forward to in the future.
Yeah, now you're on a podcast. It's great. Yeah. We got you on a great day.
Great day. Yeah, I didn't even think about it when we first planned this date, but it's perfect.
No. Another question I have for you is, I know that you guys have international chapters as well. How do those chapters work together?
Yeah, so we're still pretty small at Mothers for Nuclear, and we love it when other moms and women contact us and are like, we want to be Mothers for Nuclear too. And we're like, great, go do it. How can we help a little bit? Because we're busy and we're full-time working moms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a great group of women over in Germany, which, as you may know, is a very challenging place for nuclear. They decided to shut down their nuclear plants after the Fukushima events happened, and they've been gradually doing that over the years. And so our German Moms for Nuclear have a big challenge over there, and they've been having local events, rallies in Berlin, and do a lot of publication on social media and reaching out to their politicians and legislators, and just trying to shift the tide over there. And just recently, one of the things, the positive outcomes for nuclear over the last year, is that Germany decided to keep running their last 3 nuclear plants for longer than they had planned because of the energy crisis. So that's it's a big shift. It's a little win because we want them to keep running them longer and maybe restart some of the ones they shut down. But it's a great shift, and it shows some positive momentum in the country there. We also have the UK Mums for Nuclear, and also in Australia, there are mums there as well. And we have a chapter in Canada, and it's basically a group of caring volunteers that also have full-time jobs and kids, and we just all try to, support each other and share messaging and information and build each other up and create more of a chain reaction of support.
That is so cool. So do you guys ever meet in person, or are they all mostly Zoom or Teams meetups?
I've never met any of the German or Canadian or Australia. I haven't met any of them in person, actually. Yeah, so I hope to someday. Some of our other members from other partner organizations have traveled to Europe to help participate in some of their events. I mentioned the group called Stand Up for Nuclear that's run by a Californian woman, Paris Ortiz Wines, and she's done a great job of building this huge global community of people that hold stand up for nuclear events where, you stand up and you show your support for nuclear. And she's, organized events around the world, in the Philippines and in, Amsterdam and Japan and so many, Brazil, like around the world. And so it's really great to have connections with so many people that care about the same thing. We all want more clean energy and we want to protect our planet in the process.
Yeah. So back to the mother component, how do you involve your children in the activism?
Oh my gosh. My daughter's in the room right next door here. She's probably on the computer playing Minecraft. When she was younger, she was pretty excited about it, and she would help me make videos, like be in the videos and say stuff. And like in 2016, when we had the State Lands Commission meeting where they were, trying to decide whether to go forward with this joint proposal thing to shut down the plant that I mentioned, my daughter was actually at the meeting there. And when I went to speak, she ran, from the back of the room across, like wove through these people and came and jumped up into my arms and, sat there. She was much younger at the time. Well, 6. Yeah, she's, I guess she was about 7 then. So she sat, in my arms while I gave my testimony to the State Lands Commission, and she was, fixing my hair for me. It was very darling. But she's 13 now, and not so interested in being in the public eye. And she does help me a lot behind the scenes. She made a really cool GIF about California energy that shows how if we keep adding more solar, it helps us have more clean energy during the day. But there's these still huge amounts of natural gas that we're using in the morning and the evening, and how if we keep building more solar, it doesn't help with that. It doesn't help us address all that other natural gas usage. And it's great because I don't know how to make GIFs. She's like, do. Yeah, so she's made some really great graphics for us as well recently. So she's building her skills in different ways outside the public eye.
All the teenagers.
Yes.
So Heather, you've talked to us about why nuclear energy is important, why we should care about it. What can we do about it for those of us that are not engineers and that do not work in the field? What can our audience do?
I think it's great just to follow lots of those pro-nuclear groups that I've been mentioning: Stand Up for Nuclear, Generation Atomic, Mothers for Nuclear. Help support us on social media, share those messages with your friends. Lots of times what we're saying isn't technical. It isn't like about how the plant runs or how radiation works, like it's a lot more content about what we care about and why. And you don't have to be a nuclear expert to care about those same things and to share the messaging about why those things are important.
Yeah, so it sounds like really the support is putting the information out there and making people aware of what nuclear energy is versus what MK and I do as educated grown adult ladies, and we just think of it as negative. It's important to get that information out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely we like to, like I mentioned before, also talk about feelings, not just try to educate the public. Because like if you really think about it, do you want someone to come educate you about something that you don't really like, like so we try and offer ourselves as a resource. We say, like if you have concerns or fears, worries, let's talk about them. And I'm not going to shut you down and say, you don't need to worry about that because of blah, blah, blah. We have, all this equipment and all these barriers and all these different levels of protection. And that's maybe what our corporation might say, or, the industry historic messaging might be like, but we'll say, that makes sense. Like, we used to think that too. And like, yeah, it does sound scary, doesn't it? And like, we still have these feelings. And as humans, we're emotional creatures and we react to things that seem scary, and that's okay. And then we have to pivot to like what the actual data is and what are we going to do about, our energy situation and things that we really care about. And those fears are fine to have and acknowledge, but as also rational creatures, what do we do to address those fears and put them aside when we have to make the right decisions for our energy future?
Yeah, you're mentioning the fears. Can you tell us what the biggest misconceptions are that you hear?
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's so many. I'm trying to think. Probably the biggest, and one of my last holdouts for myself personally is just about radiation. It's pretty scary. Cancer is a scary idea, and I've gone through lots of investigations myself, to try and convince myself that it's okay or not. And I guess I don't know how many years ago it was, but I had heard of a few coworkers dying of cancer. And I was getting pretty worried about it. I started making lists of all the people that I knew that were my coworkers, like, oh my gosh, this person works on nuclear and they died of cancer. And this person died of, like, I was keeping track of people and kind of spinning myself into a bit of a frenzy.
Yeah.
But then, I realized there's some really important information out there that 40% of people will be diagnosed with some form of cancer at some point in their lives. And I was like, what? That's crazy. That's huge. And so I realized that what I was seeing wasn't anything, abnormal, out of the ordinary, and that, cancer is a very common thing. And when I look into the causes of it, there's a lot of unknowns still, but, a lot of potential chemical contributors, and air pollution is huge. Smoking is huge, stuff that we breathe in. And radiation, low-level radiation, like what I experience as a plant worker, doesn't really have any impact on cancer. So that was a hard thing to learn and realize, and something that I think a lot of people just have that association, and it's really hard to break. It's hard for me to break even now. Like, I still sometimes wonder. And so one of the things that I do to help communicate about that is I have this necklace. It is made of uranium glass. My dad was a glass blower. So speaking of my dad, the mad scientist guy that he was, he made a lot of things of glass. And he was passed away before I started Mothers for Nuclear, but he taught some classes, and so there's all these glass blowing students, and one of them is like, oh yeah, I'll make you some nuclear pendants. So she made us these. They have a little atom symbol in there.
Oh, that's so cool.
The uranium, this is a UV light. So under UV light, uranium fluorescence.
Wow. What? I want one of these.
Me too.
It glows. Because the UV light excites the uranium atom in a way that it gives off that green, like that scary green. So I'm wearing this around my neck, and it's radioactive, and it's a great talking point about how there is radiation all around us, and it's not necessarily dangerous, and it can be scary. Like, when I first started making these and wearing them, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die of chest cancer. And then I'm going to be like the worst example of nuclear advocacy. But, it's like that fear. And then there's like the rational side that you have to bring in. And I actually took this to our radiation protection experts at the plant and had them measure it. And, I'm not an expert in that field, but they told me a lot of stuff about like how, the type of radiation that it is, and, the alpha, it doesn't penetrate, so it's not dangerous. And a lot of technical stuff that if you tell normal people that, they might get scared. But that's the rational side that's like, okay, it's really fine, even though it might not feel fine. This is also something that my dad had. He had this little duck. It's also uranium glass, and it glows. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah, just over Thanksgiving, actually, too, I realized that most of the dishes in my mom's glass cabinet are uranium glass. And my sister brought out this huge spotlight, that's a UV spotlight, and we were like checking all of the dishes. And my mom's partner and caregiver was like, why is there so much radioactive stuff in our house? Oh my gosh, I'm kind of scared. So yeah, it was a great talking point for our family just a couple weeks ago.
So how can someone get involved with your organization?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways. And you can sign up on our email list. You can send us donations. And like, honestly, what I said before about we love people that are go-getters and just like want to come in and be like, here's what I want to do, and can you help me? And like, yeah, of course, we'll do that. We don't have a whole lot of like guidance. But yeah, we definitely want to meet you. We want to hear what you care about and why, and how nuclear energy may or may not fit in with that. And we want to hear if you have any concerns, and how you think we could, answer other people's concerns. And yeah, just basically how to grow our movement and how to convince other people of the importance of supporting nuclear.
Yeah, and I saw that you guys had t-shirts, if I'm not mistaken. Do some of the proceeds go towards, the advocacy?
Yes. Yeah. We actually, right now, we don't really know how to spend our money.
I love the honesty.
It's so funny. I'm like, everyone's always asking for more money, but like, really, we need help. We love people that are excited about maybe doing graphic design. If you want to volunteer to help us do communications, writing stories.
Awesome.
We get a very small amount of donations, through our website, and we get a small amount of those proceeds from people that buy our Mothers for Nuclear t-shirts and merch. But really, the best way that you could help is to buy the merch and then like wear it and post on social media about it, and like really share the message to a broader audience.
So many of our audience members are artists and are in fact graphic artists, so I'm interested once this podcast posts.
Yes.
If anybody wanted to get into contact with the organization, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, well, on our website, we have all our contact information. You can sign up on our form there to join our email list, or just send us a message. You can always email info@mothersfornuclear.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, lots of other social platforms. So you can probably find us on, we don't do very much on TikTok, but we're trying to branch out and doing a little more video
what? We're
content.
right there with you.
We don't know what to do on TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, so we're kind of like spread around all of those platforms, and we'll respond to any questions or requests for contact. And we'd love to hear from anyone who's interested in what we do, why, and wants to join the effort.
Thank you so much, Heather, for joining MK and I on the actual nuclear day. We really appreciate your time. If you guys want to contact Heather, we'll leave the social media links in our description below. Thank you so much for joining us, Heather.
Thanks so much for having me, and I love you guys. Thank you so much.